Okay, thank you. We're called to order the December 19th workshop.
All right.
Superintendent?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Thank everybody for coming. And I think we're getting a little better with technology, but we'll get better as we go. We'll go ahead and jump right into the agenda review, go into item 1. Item 1 is just the workshop and special meeting minutes from December 6th, from our student hearings along from our regular board meeting from December 15th.
Can I interrupt for a
Yes,
minute?
ma'am.
This is the agenda review for the January 5th regular school board meeting.
Correct. Thank you, ma'am. So if we turn back to any questions that anyone may have from C1 for minutes. All right, good. Going to C2, looking at proposed allocation changes. This month we have an ESC assistant that is moving from Ridgeview Elementary School. This individual is definitely due after looking at IEP plan. This student needs a one-on-one support staff. So an ESC assistant will be provided for the student. So this will be a 0.9 position going to Ridgeview Elementary in order to better serve students. In addition, you'll see a 0.128 basic allocation for a dual enrollment teacher. This is a teacher to provide assistance at Orange Park High School to continue to provide dual enrollment opportunities. This is an opportunity for teachers elected to teach during their planning period. So this is pretty much a buyout to provide additional pathways for students.
Just on a side note, Mr. Davis, if you could look into, I've had a number of questions from Keystone area parents, not all Keystone area, but mostly that there seems to be some understanding that if you do dual enrollment through
Right.
St. John's River, you
Right.
can start in 9th grade, but if you do it through Santa Fe, which is the campus that's within walking distance of
Right.
Keystone High School, that you can't start until 11th grade. And there's some rumors that has to do with some board member of St. John's River State College or something, but
Okay.
it's not, I don't know where it comes from, if it's a Clay County policy or if it's where it comes from.
Okay.
There's
But,
something changed last year saying that dual enrollment could start at an earlier time. Normally it wasn't freshman.
Yeah.
It was, I want to say it was junior and
Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
year. They moved it up
Correct.
to even as early as junior high,
Right.
which is really young.
Yeah.
well, so
that's
maybe we need to
big.
clarify that with, maybe it's the Keystone Guidance Counselors or,
Sure.
but and I also did try to confirm it with Santa Fe College, and they are under the understanding that it's a Clay County thing.
It is.
Okay.
And it's not a Santa Fe College issue. So,
Fine.
if you could just, I just,
Sure.
for further, it's
Yep.
not,
Nope, I'll look at dual enrollment and around the entire county and then kind of narrow it down to Keystone area to see when the start period should be. I agree historically it's been junior year, but I believe you can transition as early as you can as long as students have the course sequencing or it's allowing them the opportunity to do so within the course sequence.
yeah, I would imagine.
Well, there was something last year that you want to look into, and I believe it was a statute that said 8th graders could go and do dual enrollment. And I believe it had something to do with, the college campus wanting 13, 12-year-old kids, with 20-year-olds. So there was something to do with that.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
should just look into it.
Well, do we do an agreement every however many years with St. John's and also
We
with
did.
the others? And I'm wondering if during that update, if we did update with the second college, Santa Fe versus St. John's.
So I don't think St.
Since
John's
that's not
is taking
it.
any junior high students. And
Sure.
that was the issue.
This was primarily around the fact that St. John's River can take 9th or 10th graders, and Santa Fe has been told that
Right.
And
that
those are taught.
Clay kids could not,
Right.
and I don't know.
Yes, ma'am, I'll look into it. Yes,
I
ma'am.
know, I can tell you this much, Bradford County takes 9th and 10th graders. Santa Fe does.
Yeah. Okay, that's it for staff allocation. Any questions here? Okay, going to the next one, which is 17-18 C3, 17-18 student calendar. This calendar is where I had a working committee work group to identify all the days throughout the year, as long as any early dismissal or we don't have, but any other report cards will be to be determined once we approve the calendar.
Is State Street gonna be an early release day on Wednesdays?
Not as, I
They're
mean,
doing that again.
we do it this year, correct?
They started this year.
Early release, right now they're forecasted to be kind of the mirror the same that we had last year. They're, you know, I'm gonna continue negotiations and talks, to figure out if we can provide an extended opportunity to have early release, dismissal days to really look at, professional learning. And not only having like 40 to 60 minutes, but more of a 90-minute opportunity. I think if we can dive deeper into the professional learning, then I think we can really start looking at the shifts of instruction and better understanding our content to drive through it. So kind of left it blank right now give us a couple of days for me to kind of work on it, determine how that outlook will be.
Which board member was on the calendar committee this time? You?
Well, why did you question the early release dates?
No, I was just sitting here thinking about it because last year there
It was
was
our
a
first year.
a lot of talk about it, about the early release days. So I was just wondering
Okay,
if they were
do
going
you
to continue.
understand why they did the early release days?
I was on the calendar
Oh,
committee,
good job.
but I was just wondering if they were going to continue.
I had been assigned to the calendar committee for this, whatever, but no one ever let me know when the meetings were, so I didn't know.
But you served on it from the board?
Miss Corrigan was
No.
looking for
Who
someone,
was on
so she contacted Miss Boland.
It was supposed to have been me, but no one.
So when we put assignments together, we'll make sure that staff has all of that.
It didn't matter, I mean, really, but I just wanted the record to show that I didn't just skip
Slap
out.
it off.
I put my 2
Don't worry.
cents in though for a half day
Let's go to
on
me.
Halloween versus the 30th.
And I will say that there were some original conversations that graduation historically has been on one day. I questioned it, it's not time to alter it in 17-18, but for 18-19, we'll look at it is figuring out how we can have graduation on separate days, because I would love to be at everybody's graduation. I really would. I think it shows care with the superintendent there, but for 17-18, we'll continue for June 1. But maybe 18-19, we'll try to figure out the calendar, or we can, if that's a possibility, to we'll speak through, because I'd love to attend them. And I know it's not about me, but I just want to be there to support. So, just know that 18-19 made it different.
There's probably a lot of grandparents that would appreciate that.
I guess not. Trying to do it here, it's too late though. Let's see it. All right, we're good on that one? C4 talks about, this is our summer reading camp calendar. This is where it's our third grade students who do not meet the good cause exemption and have to attend summer learning for retention purposes. There are some new outliers that the state released to allow students to pass or be promoted based on STAR scores and also based on iReady scores. Some of our schools do use iReady as through our Title I schools, but it gives them another opportunity. But this is just our mandated opportunity for our summer for third grade kids who have not passed the FSA. This will be a 29-30-day program, and it will be half day as always. And we usually have around 100 students that we offer this opportunity to. But we will push for the next couple of months about getting our students ready to be proficient, and we will look at student portfolios and look at any other good cause exemptions to allow our students to be successful prior to coming to this opportunity. Okay, good. All right, C5, this is another opportunity. We continue to have ESE summer calendar, summer school. This is where we have an extended summer school year for students based on their 504 or IEP. This is a 5-week program, and we usually serve between 100 and 150 students within the district. It will start, I believe, on the 19th, and then it will journey all the way through, I think, July 20th. I think it will be our 20th, maybe the last day. Giving them a couple of days off for July 4th. Any questions here? All right.
Is that K through 12?
It will be. Yes, ma'am. Legislative priorities is the next one, which is C6. I know that this is an area that we talked about maybe kind of pushing down to have maybe 3 anchor areas of focus versus having the larger bullets. So I don't know if we want to talk about this now, about identifying what our priorities will be.
I personally think we need to get it down to 3 or 4 things,
Yeah.
because they're not gonna read this.
Yes.
And just on a side note, I was looking on the item that said, make the election of the superintendent of schools non-partisan.
Non-partisan.
It's not patrician, it's partisan.
I think it's gonna, we have so
That-
many more.
There's so many other things.
No.
I don't think
That's
we
a
need
political.
need
Yeah,
to include it.
that shouldn't be one of ours.
For the record, I'm the one who suggested that, by the way.
I think it's a good
And
idea, but
it's
if
the
we're
only
only
way
gonna do
we can
3
get
or
it to
4.
make, to be made
Yeah.
different. The only way that we can get that to change is through legislative priorities, so it's more important things, I agree. But that's why I asked to be put on there, because there were a lot of people in the last 2 elections particularly, over the last 8 years, that have made major changes in their lifestyles in order to be able to vote. And since we're all nonpartisan, you're right, we're not non-patrician, whatever that was, nonpartisan, that's why I stuck in it, I asked for it to be put in there.
I have never understood from the state law changed in the 90s, and it made, see, the first, it used to be we ran by party. And then they changed it in the 90s, and for some reason they didn't change the superintendents, which makes no sense at all.
That's what I thought as well. But yes, I'm willing to take that off for the better of the overall good. Was there, and that, I'd like if I may make a note, the one oppose any proposal to redistribute, a portion of the district's 1.5 capital outlay millage to charter schools. I don't know if we want to, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Restore and support the authority of the school district by levy by simple majority vote up to 2.0 mils for capital outlay purposes. That was the one I was looking for, sorry. That I would like to stay on there.
I
That's
like
one
that
of,
too.
that's one of
That's
those
the best
SBA's.
we get.
So that's gonna be that's a statewide
Yeah.
That's a
priority,
statewide
so
effort, so let's,
Number 1, number 3, and number 4 tend to mirror the state ones. Like number 2, they're gonna say they approved the Seminole solution last year, so they don't understand the difference there.
Right.
So they're not gonna look into that one in the same light. But I think if we can give it to them in bite-sized pieces that mirror FADS and FSBA.
I like the one, oppose any changes to the care control open enrollment law. I think that's gonna be something that's gonna be an issue for us.
I think it could be, but again, you're asking for something that you don't know is gonna come forward, where we have real issues that, we really need addressed. I think that's what we need to focus on. But you can, to me, that's one of those things that if the issue comes about, then you instruct your lobbyist or you start making the phone calls to let them know how you feel about that issue. If it
Like if
comes to
someone
fruition.
introduces a bill.
Sure.
Right. So, because I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, they could make changes that are better.
Right.
You know, if they're starting to hear from people within their counties and things that
This isn't
this,
working.
or this should be a cap, or you should put a percentage here, or something like that, changes might be better to that law. Because right now, there's no threshold.
We can only hope.
It's very open-ended right
We
now.
can only hope.
So recommendations would be, did we say 1
One.
with third grade retention? We also said 3. I believe 3 is one of the biggest ones we can do to generate funding for capital outlay. And then what was the other one?
4.
I like 4.
4. This is for just additional funding to become more competitive.
yes.
But I do think that 1, 3, and 4 are the FSBA.
They are.
So we would be mirroring the
What,
state.
pushing? I'm a number 2 guy, but I get it. It's all about funding. 2, I think we will get pushed. I think that's 2 years from getting pushed through and with using ACT and SAT. But I believe then that will be eventually a gatekeeper.
I
But
think where we can get that one through, if we want to try to push it through, is if we could show that it could save money.
yeah,
You know, if you're already, I mean, obviously for 11th graders, you're
Sure.
already doing those testing,
Mhm.
those tests anyway.
right.
The problem is they've already spent all the money on developing
Yeah.
FSA.
I think we're 2 years away from that one, so I think it can hold it next year. But I'll push it on the backside with superintendents.
There's some counties that are already doing that, aren't there?
Mm-mm.
Not across the
Some,
board.
not across.
And what about the last one? Does anybody feel strongly about the last one?
I think that kind of rolls a little bit
As
into
long
the
as
first
the
one.
It kind of
first,
is.
yeah.
If we could add one more, I'd go with Mary on that superintendent of schools nonpartisan. I mean, just to throw it out there, I don't know if you probably need, I don't know if it's going anywhere.
I don't
Right.
think we
But I think it, at least throw it out there, it's just a one-liner.
Should we wait, here's an idea on that one, if you feel strongly about it, you need somebody to sponsor it. So is it something that we should, instead of putting it on our legislative priorities, that we should try to get one of our legislators to sponsor that? Probably,
Would any of them go for it?
I don't know that they would.
Have you had any help?
And that's what, so, you know,
I don't know if it's.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, you have to determine is that something that they're going to accept at this point? Is this a priority within within our body? I mean, maybe for us, it may be a priority. To me, I'm indifferent.
I don't see it as a state priority per
Yeah.
se.
I think with the budget issues we have,
That's
the
everybody,
testing
yes.
issues we have, those are everybody's main aims.
Right.
I think that's what we need to focus on.
And Ms. Bola, I can help try to create excitement on the other side if you want me to.
But it might be worth a phone call to Bobby Payne,
Yeah.
because I don't know that anybody's brought that up to him, and he represents Clay. So he might
Good
be,
idea.
he might be a
Good
good
idea.
contact.
Okay, so right now we have 1, 3, and 4 that will be our stance for,
Sounds good.
okay? All righty. C7. This is all students' employee calendar again. This is just the other calendar process for employees, which kind of mirrors our calendar for students as well.
This is just
Just outlined.
working on it as we speak.
So,
That's
we're going to get it posted. This is in-service days, professional development
Just read
days,
about it.
Yes, ma'am.
pre-planning days, in the school year days
And that, it's
for
not
for
complete.
staff.
Hopefully by this week it will be, we're trying to get it on there. Ms. Carrickus, we just need permission to add that as soon as we get it. I mean, that's just,
Thank you, ma'am.
my question is on the, planning day for Wednesday, January 3rd, and I have not looked back at other years, so this may be consistent, but 9-month personnel don't work on planning days. They don't, because I thought we had some teachers that were paid as 9-month personnel, like ROTC or, because they were paid, I thought there were somehow, some teachers were paid something so that, because then part was paid out of something else, or,
RTC is split, but they're still,
They're
still
usually
10,
11
yeah, 11-month employees.
oh, okay.
Yeah, they're still 11, we just pay half and they pay half,
Okay.
but they still have all working conditions and days such as any other gen ed teacher or non-gen ed teacher that we pay for full-time. If there's any questions, let me know, and if there could be questions that you look through later, we can adjust if need be.
and it is a work in progress with payroll and food service and so there probably will be a couple of changes in there, but as soon as we pull it all together, I'll shoot it out to you.
What is this one day for, June 20th? It's Wednesday, June 20th, 11-month instructional support, work 3.75 hours.
Yes, ma'am. To make it at a contractual, we gave them the 2 days, we just did that with payroll. She's gotta have exact amount of hours to fulfill their contract. So we gave them the 10-hour days Monday and Tuesday, and that leaves them only the 3.75 to make that right. So we went ahead and gave that to them as like an early release on Wednesday.
Anybody else have questions on this? We're good to move forward.
Yes, ma'am. C8, some personnel consent agenda. One thing that you will notice is Mr. Merrill is identified here for his retirement date for effective March 1st. Other than that, it's just any basic allocations that are being filled or positions that are being filled by staff in open positions or any resignations and retirements as well.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
if in fact the hiring of those positions are done, we could put the new employees on that agenda if given permission to update the personnel consent agenda on the 3rd, I guess it would be. It would be 48 hours before the board meeting, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's up to you. The
It's okay.
timeline is so close.
Through the chair, if okay, if we have candidates that we know of to hire in those positions that were allocated, then I'll call and see if it's okay to put them on the board agenda so that we actually hire someone before they start.
That's fine.
Yes, ma'am. Any questions for C8?
Nope.
All right, C9 is advertisement for the controlled open enrollment program process, and this is going to be a placeholder. We are creating our announcement as we speak now. Please know that staff will be working in the next couple of weeks to have an outline planned, prepared. Only thing we're doing is making a notice that we will have a plan for February to present along with a timeline. As of right now, we are looking at 85% as our utilization threshold. Originally we would say at 90%. However, with growth in certain areas of our county, we want to make sure we protect neighborhood students. This will be a part where everyone understands this is no transportation, and that this could cause potential challenges for schools that are already underutilized, where parents may want to leave those schools and go to schools that are more affluent or better performing, and that will then cause a number of problems financially to continue to finance an allocation plan for schools that are underutilized and under-enrolled for schools within our county. We will be very savvy about what we do to better support them, but we won't know more from a projection standpoint until we open the window for parents and students to really identify what schools they have aspirations to go to. And then at the same time, when we launch our plan in February, we'll know exactly how many seats are each school, and that will be publicized on our website. I believe we're going to do that weekly. We're going to how many seats are. We'll so weekly we'll update it at the beginning from February on to the summer to know actually how many seats will be available in that school, so every constituent understands, and it's going to go to a waiting list.
Will this be handled like our special pupil request where they have no behavioral issues, no referrals? Will it be renewable every year depending on capacity?
Yeah, I don't believe that we can put those criterions in there because it's just directly open. We can protect the schools that we currently have now. We'll put that within our plan. But for every other seat that's available, I think it's just going to be a part where it's like first come, first serve, and be created through a waiting list.
Well, what do we do if we have a school that new neighborhood's going in and all of a sudden that's their neighborhood school, they're
Right.
entitled to those seats, and we've got 30 students that
Yes, ma'am.
are there through this open enrollment? Can we remove those 30 students?
I
Not the
don't.
statute.
Yeah, I don't know
The
if we
statute
can.
expressly said, as long as they're there, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead, you're
but
good.
It expressly said you cannot remove them for anything other than expulsion
Yeah.
type. And then you can't, and you have to keep them through, so if you had a K-8, you would have to keep them to 8. You have a K-5 or, so you
So
have
that
a,
means that it is removable every year.
And this
So
is.
are we gonna have stricter expectations for students transferring from school to school within the county because we use the special pupil form? And I feel like that's fair if you're gonna.
Yeah, this is, open enrollment is fair game open. Is there any certain criteria you think that we can put?
Okay, so,
Sure, go ahead.
point of clarification to Superintendent. So obviously, this controlled open enrollment addresses Section 5 of House Bill 7029. And so I've got a couple of handouts here for you. These two are the Florida statute pieces that authorize. So for the January board meeting, what we'd like to do is propose board policy that basically authorizes the district to create a plan, a detailed plan. So the board policy is somewhat generic, making sure that we do meet each section of the law to the letter of the law, and then the staff will be developing a detailed plan to handle some of the issues that you're talking about this morning. It's a very complex undertaking.
It won't affect our academies at all, so we can still have control.
Correct.
We can address things such as if we have an IB program or special academies, there are certain stipulations where you can deny, but for the most part, the state or the legislation gives us a hierarchy for selecting students. There's a lottery system, for example. We have to detail our lottery plan on how we select students for those open spots, as well as capacity.
My request is that we don't treat students within the county less than we're treating the students
Yeah.
outside the county.
That's addressed in the legislation, says you cannot displace an in-county student. They actually have, and Mr. Merrill, you're very well up on the legislation as well, but they also give other priorities such as those children under foster care, if there's a court order, custody issue, military, we have to give those preferential treatment.
And like what Ms. Karakas was saying, the special pupil request, if there's a discipline issue, if they've been tardy too many times, like they can deny their request to move schools, but if we're not gonna deny requests from outside the county,
That's
Yeah.
correct.
we shouldn't be denying them.
I'm not certain this is gonna allow us to deny a request for them to move.
If they're under threat of expulsion from their previous, we
Yeah,
don't
that's
have to
the,
accept
yeah, that's the,
permission.
but that's the only,
That's it.
that's the only threshold that allows us to determine whether or not they stay or go.
You're gonna
This
have a
is just
bunch of
gonna be
upset
denied.
property
Yeah.
taxpayers in
Yeah.
Clay County if their kid gets denied moving to a school they wanna go to because of tardiness.
Yeah.
But a kid from Duval gets to
Sure,
come.
I know, we
Well,
agree.
So I think one comment on that is a lot of special pupil requests would go away
They would.
because
Yeah.
you wouldn't, I
So are we
mean,
You-
not gonna have that?
No, well, you just, it'd be completely open and roll,
Well,
yeah.
wouldn't the special pupil request be just for the academies?
That's
now?
correct,
That would be
and
the only
protected
reason.
programs, any programmatic anchor schools that we have through academies, specialized schools and programs, they will be protected by a lottery process, the same in which we identify kids and have criterion for academics, attendance, behavior, those types of things. Everyone else who doesn't, pathways and have seats available, then it's below the 85% threshold, then we have to open those seats. I believe, and staff did a good job pushing back with identifying the 85%. I think that minimizes the number of seats that we open and allows us for growth internally for neighborhood students. I will say this, and we can decide as a board if we want to. If you would like, we can change it. St. Johns County is going with 80%. I believe that's very low. I believe that they could potentially set themselves up for litigation. I could be incorrect, but they're also anchoring that based on their projected growth in the next 3 years. But they're also building 3 schools, so I don't know how they go to 80%. So we can change it to 80 if that's what you'd like to do. I think 85 is fair, and I think it covers most of our schools currently.
And, yes, sir, and our kids do have priority over our county kids. It's military, then foster, and then custody, and then our own kids, and then it's open enrollment after that. So our kids do have priority over out-of-county kids.
So with this being kind of a short throw in terms of the board meeting happening at the beginning of January, this is obviously a very important piece of legislation and policy and plan. So that's why you don't have a proposed policy in front of you today. Obviously, Mr. Merrill, Mr. Outlaw, myself, as well as legal, we're making sure that we are in policy addressing all of the requirements of the statute. So within the next day or two, you should see our proposed policy.
another reason that we may want to look at that special pupil request is because, you know, it's my opinion that a lot of those things that are handled at the school level today should not be at the school level, because that opens the board up for litigation from a parent, because the other thing that can happen is kids can decide to change within the school year. So that's not a huge deal with inter-county, but you may have a kid who decides to go, and usually it's sports related, but you may
Yeah.
have a kid who decides to play football in Duval County.
Yeah.
basketball in Clay
right.
County and baseball in
That
St.
is
John's.
correct.
And then the FTE gets moved.
Yeah.
So,
That is correct, and this is where the FHSAA has become very stringent. If you get caught recruiting, it's $5,000 fine, and I believe that fine, I have to figure out that fine goes. I think the fine goes directly to that coach. That coach has to pay that $5,000, and that certificate may be impacted through professional standards as well. So they, with this coming on board, they have to do something that has some teeth, and $5,000 is a lot of money. But I agree, you could have kids that are bouncing around playing athletics in certain places.
which is
This-
not good for their academics.
It's not, it's not.
But we can't stop that.
Nope, we cannot.
But see, right now, I think there are some things that happen within our schools where principals say, just apply here. And that could get us as
Yeah.
a district into trouble.
I agree.
What's the deadline that we're supposed to have the policy by? Are we right on schedule for
I
this?
don't have that in front of me, I have to double check it, I'm not sure.
In terms of the state or in terms, because the state, the DOE said they will not collect, review, or approve any plan.
Oh.
As long as we have, I
As long as we have one.
guess, by June
Yeah.
30, we're okay.
We need to have this done and ready and launched throughout our community by February, I would say. And because at the same time, this is where I'd like to do a school expo. So now that we have open seats, we go to school expo, you know how many seats they have. Maybe we can start the sign-up process at that time, so that we can have an aggressive window identifying who needs additional seatings to go to 85%, and that students know where they're going for 17-18 school year, so we can better plan through our staff allocation model for those students as well. Okay.
Very good.
C11 talks about academic support services. This is student travel. We have students. I did not have C10. Let me see. Oh yeah, I did. I got 510. Yeah. This is proclamation for just pretty much announcing this Career Technical Education Month.
I had a question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down. Whereas more than 7,300 CTE students are enrolled in one of the over 60 registered career and professional education academies. Should it say career and professional education, or should that be technical?
It probably should be technical.
That's what I thought. But maybe it is, so just
I'll
have somebody
ask.
look at that to see.
Alright,
I'll just give you my.
that's fine. I circled it. Here,
Which
one was it,
The
Mr.
Title
agenda item
VII.
says technical educate, career and
Yeah,
technical
it
education.
says career and technical
Technical.
education everywhere except for that one spot, it says professional, and
Yeah.
I thought it was probably just an
Yeah.
error.
And if there's any activities and engagement opportunities within schools, I will send that out, so the board understands and knows what we're doing for that month as well. Yes, ma'am.
Probably should have had them as one of our spotlight for the beginning of the month.
All right, C11, this is student travel. We have Orange Park Elementary School going to an event in May. We have Orange Park High School going to events, Ridgeview going to events. The only one that has already taken place is the Fleming Island, happened in
The
December.
candlelight ceremony.
Is in Epcot.
And they know about that, so there's no excuse for
I
them to
agree.
come to us late.
I agree.
That's one of my pet peeves.
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to make sure that I was out in front when I saw it. But Oak Leaf High School, FFA will be going to compete and down south with a leadership training program in their center through Oak Leaf High School. And Ridgeview's Drama Club will be going to Tampa. And Orange Park High School will be going to Naples, Florida in January for their engineering program, their students, in order to compete and learn about new ways to implement processes and programs within their school. And then Ridgeview ROTC will be going to Brunswick in January as well. Drama's going in March. Okay.
Do these
Go ahead.
require board approval? Do they have to be action items?
Anything that's outside of the state and overnight,
Is that a policy thing or is that?
I have to see if it's.
State statute?
I don't know if that's a policy. I'll look and see if it's policy.
Because I'm looking on Fleming Islands, like you said, it got turned in late. It says it's received too late for December 15th board meeting, so it's received for information. So, I mean, if it can be information items, then why wouldn't they be?
Mike approves it, and then it comes to the board. But we, I think we.
But it may not need to be an action
I
item,
think,
and
I
then it
think we're
wouldn't be an
supposed to
issue.
approve travel.
I think anything that's
I
out.
think it's in
Sorry, I'm
policy,
looking.
I'm not sure.
I'll find
where.
out, student travel.
If
I'll
nothing
get
else,
it.
it keeps the board informed of where everybody's going.
But
Well,
are you gonna deny somebody the travel, you know what I'm saying?
Well, the only time we've run into it in
So that's
past
why I'm
years
thinking it
is,
might just need to be an
Yeah.
information only item, it might not need to be an action item.
We've denied
The
out
only
of
thing
state
that-
that was,
in past years, I remember when Mr. Scruby was the attorney, he would always, his eyebrows would get raised if it was out of state, because, I mean, we have to be very careful about the insurance and who's, and how they're going, and the insurance and the out of state was the ones that would get him, and get his attention, but
Just
I
for the
don't know,
point of
I've never known
consistency
us
is
not
all
to
I'm saying.
approve travel.
Well, a couple of years ago, it was turned over to the principals to approve the field trips.
the principals do, and then it goes to Mike Wingate, and then he brings it to the board.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's the first step in the
So, I mean, it's been
process.
approved by the principals, it's been approved by Mike Wingate,
Right.
and now it's coming to the board.
Sometimes there's just a lot of red tape.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I feel like
that's what I'm saying.
If
It's
we can
like,
alleviate some of that, then we ought to.
For me, yeah, it's
Well, no,
accountability.
I think the
Right,
red
it's
tape needs to
accountability,
stay in
yeah.
place, because I think the district needs to be aware of who's traveling,
mhm.
where they are, and when
No, I
they're
agree we
going.
should be aware,
So
but
it
But
should
this
still
happened,
come to
yeah.
us. And the one that I pointed out, Fleming Island High School, the candlelight ceremony at Disney, that didn't just pop up last
Right.
week. They know in advance that they're going because they're raising money for it. And I know this because my son went for years. So it was just somebody, just failed to fill out the paperwork and get it to us. And I really feel strongly that that needs to be done on time. It needs to be submitted on time and received to the board in time to be approved.
I
I
agree.
understand when there's a competition that comes up because our wrestling team has done so great, or our OTC has done really well, and they've been invited to compete at the next level. That I completely understand, but the routine things that come about, and you'll see some of them like career in tech, the beginning of the year, we get like almost their whole year's worth of travel, so we know when they're going.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't follow the timeline, I'm just saying if it doesn't require our
Mhm.
approval, it might be one less thing, one less obstacle for our principals and schools to be able to get their work
Well,
done.
I think it still should require our approval. I think
How
it should
how
come
many,
before us
how
so
many
that
come
when
late?
we're-
Is it every school that
If
has
you-
has a hard time
If you
getting
watch every
it
month,
in
there's
late?
there's
It
There
routinely,
was-
seems to
there-
kind of hit in
Uh-huh.
waves.
there's a
So-
lot that come late.
They'll get to where you'll have half of them have already happened,
Mhm.
and then
I've
you
noticed
talk to
that, but I
Mike
just
about
didn't
it,
know
and
if
then
it's
Mike will
specific.
get all over
Then
them,
all of a
and then
sudden-
they'll be
Yeah.
efficient. But after a few months pass, then people get a little lax again, and they have to kind of
Yeah.
get boosted up,
But it
because
should
they
also
get to
be
where
at the
they just.
district level, that's the issue, processing.
Yeah, we're
paperwork.
putting systems in place to make certain, and also another reminder out from email to make certain that anything that's approved, it's approved in advance. So we're making them do 2 or 3 weeks in advance. That way, the only way that I would see is any type of competition that teams or organizations or extracurriculars participate in that may not have time. But I do not disagree with Ms. Karakis on this one, in the sense that this is probably known for
They
6
do it
months.
every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go
Well,
every year.
they do go every year, but they have to be selected and they have to be given a date from Epcot. So it's not a situation where they get
Yeah.
to, they know 6 months in advance when they're
Sure.
going to be singing.
Well, not
They
to
have
sound
to
like,
audition to get into it and be able to go through it.
and not to sound like a total Scrooge, that this is gonna sound like, but, we get beat up pretty hard about fundraising and how many activities that we're not funding and we're not able to fund, and therefore they have to fundraise. But most of these things they're fundraising for are extras. And I'm not, again, I don't mean to sound like a Scrooge, because I think every child should have the opportunity to do these things.
Right.
And have these, and some of them, that's their only opportunities to see some of these kinds of
Right.
things. And have exposures from a future professional
Yes, ma'am.
standpoint. But it's sometimes difficult when we're beat up for, we require so much fundraising of our,
Right.
it's to go to, on a trip.
That's right. I'll send an email out.
All right.
Is there a date, going back to the Fleming Island one, this character,
This goes away.
is there a date that the teacher actually, is there a date on here where the teacher actually started this people?
I don't know, it didn't.
I can go back.
Because we're blaming, like,
Yeah,
Ms.
we don't know
Gilhouse
where
was
They
they
said
saying,
it could be the district,
It
it
could
could be
be
somebody,
that we
but
don't know where the
I've
bump
spoken with
is.
principals who have said,
Because
I
I
turned
mean,
that paperwork
Yeah.
in 3 weeks ago.
Received late, so it says received on
but we don't
December
have it,
5th.
and that's, it
Received
says,
on December 15th.
no, it says received too late for December 15th.
Yeah, it doesn't
Well,
say
too
the date
late,
it
Too
was.
late,
spelled.
okay.
You might wanna-
just look into it, we don't
Yeah.
need to beat this to death.
Yeah, that's easy systems. All right, C12 was removed. We elected, this didn't have to come, it was private fund dollars of Title II aid. It was used for St. John's Country Day, so we can go to C13. This is also a proclamation of National School Counselor Week, which is February 6th to the 10th, and just highlighting the month. Once again, any activities that,
This one had an error too. It just has the title at the bottom there twice.
you want it alongside or underneath?
It doesn't matter.
I'll put it alongside, left side, like mine.
Just
Take that
once.
one out. Yes, ma'am.
That's
What's your squad? Any activities that we do for this week, I'll push to the board as well, so that you'll be in touch with what we're doing within the system and within the schools to celebrate this week.
Mr. Davis, at the bottom of that one, did you catch how they, I don't know which typo you're talking about, but you see fifth? We've got fifth with another T on the end, fifth to,
That's an extra day. Yes, sir.
Done that.
fifth. It's on the fifth, Carol.
Okay. All right, we'll go to the next one. Do we have any questions? This is Intel Math Consultant Agreement. This is an agreement, their consultant, should be C14.
Yeah, and you
There's
know
just
that
no
there's
backup.
no backup for this.
Oh, should have. Okay, well, I'll make sure we'll send stuff to you.
And that's because it was such a quick turnaround that they're still getting them into this push. This was the one that we
Yeah.
probably won't see this again where there's
Yeah.
so many missing.
Right.
But it
I'll-
is, you know, we just had the last meeting, it's just a short.
I'll send it to you today. Actually, I have it as of late last night. This is where we partner with Elizabeth Schultz. I hope I say her name right correctly. This is to provide training for Intel Math. This is no cost to the district at all. It's through our DDEA funds for in-service for our teachers. This is all for K-8 mathematics. This is where we will provide training in March, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for anyone. This is pretty much how mathematical practices align to their body of work, how they dive deep into understanding the conceptual knowledge of math, how do they look at problem solving and rigorous activities, and just really look at what we're doing in the classroom to better assist for students to understand the conceptual math practices versus just really working with numbers. So understand how they arrive at setting up equations, how they arrive with understanding the final product, and then checking their answers and through that standpoint. So
How long is this program now? 2 weeks or just the 3 days?
it's just gonna be a 3-day process, and just open to teachers who want to come on an individual day.
Those 3 days for that particular training? Is this still part, are you familiar with the Intel Math that we've done up to this point?
I am not.
Okay, I was just curious,
Yeah,
because
that-
there's been a program in place, and I'm curious as to where this fits in with the, whatever it is now, it used to be a week-long
Right.
training or 2-week training this summer.
Yes, ma'am.
Started a number of
That's-
years ago that,
And my understanding from Ms. Schofield is that those teachers who have gone through that, their math scores are exponentially higher than teachers who haven't.
I'd be curious about mine, I went through that program. I don't know, I was in the first cohort of that group. But I'm curious, it would be nice to have some backup data
Sure.
to
I'll
support
send
that
it.
comment.
I said
'Cause the
exactly what I
comment is
asked.
there, but, and I've heard that from another source who teaches it, who gets paid by this grant.
Correct.
And I'm just curious as to how this money is allocated.
Yes, ma'am. It will. I will send you the cohort data for the last couple of years. You'll see it, progression from pre-test to end of year test, so you'll be able to look at it and know that after this year's data has come, we'll look at this and determine if it's effective or not. But I didn't want to stop the train in the middle of the process. So,
No, that's cool.
yes, ma'am.
I was just curious about
Nope,
it.
no worries. I'll be sure I'll send it to. Okay, we'll go to the C-15. Go ahead.
I have a question about
Yes, ma'am.
the grants. I'm in here again, I'm new, so I'm not certain when you want, so we can both go
Yeah.
through it together. I'm confused as to, I'd like some understanding, I guess is the question, as to where the grant money comes in and how it's spent.
Yep,
I mean, because there are millions of dollars out there.
fair question.
We're talking millions of dollars. And in talking with Dr. Legutko, I know that it's not necessarily through her
Right.
office
Right.
that a lot of this is handled. And it would just be, I'm curious as a board member to know where the money has come in, where it's going, how it's being allocated in that respect.
Yes, ma'am.
Didn't we a couple of years ago, I mean literally like almost 2 years ago or getting close to that, didn't we approve a grant, some kind of a grant tracker position? That's not what it's
Yeah,
called.
we did.
Didn't we have somebody?
A grant writer, it wasn't a.
But I thought there was somebody it was kind of an administrative task that was going to.
Are you thinking of that position we
We
made
just-
just the internal auditor?
I think.
Was
No,
that-
I thought it was
Michelle
a,
Larson.
Michelle Larson?
She was just approved.
Coordinator, grant, I think she works over in his area.
Yeah, she tracks the tail end of it, you know, all the grant deliverables, she helps keep all the trains on the tracks to make sure we actually are delivering what we say we are when we're committing to the dollars.
Yeah.
She doesn't do any writing, she's on the back of the finance end.
So my commitment is by February. I'm doing contracts now. I've
Okay.
captured all the contracts from everybody's division. I'm putting together, figuring out what we're spending, why we're spending,
Great.
where's the alignment. Grants are next, and then we'll get to identify all the grants, what department the grants have been awarded to, what funding, how much money is allocation, and how long is it, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what our deliverables are, and how we're using the funding. So I'll have that
Thank
February.
you, that
Yes,
would be
ma'am.
great, thank you very much.
That'd be good to know.
You'll pass that to all the board members.
Yes, ma'am.
In that position, by the way, was the one that we just approved in our first meeting. That started a year ago.
but I thought there was one a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
didn't we? There was
How long
something.
ago
There
was
was-
Michelle Larson's?
Michelle was
2
when
years
we,
ago?
yeah, when we did the reorg. I think it was, wasn't it last?
Yeah,
It was
the
last,
ones that
not
were
last
late
year.
to the board agenda.
Right, but it was
So
that
it was
year.
almost
thinking of
16, 18 months ago.
This is the first year I was here.
Did he
No,
say
she
she
doesn't.
I didn't read it.
Right, she just
She
tracks.
just administers.
Yeah.
So
She
doesn't-
administers
she
the
doesn't
grant,
write.
which is, that's fine, she says this is where the money's going. It's frustrating, well, I'm thinking here again from the teacher's perspective, where the money's coming from. For instance, we're coming into the era now, in the next couple of months, we're going to be talking about tutoring.
Yep.
And money going to teachers who are going to be working additional hours to tutor the students, to prep them for FSA, FCAT, whatever. And invariably, we get money for reading and math, and then that extra grant comes up for science, and invariably it's at the last, 2 weeks
Yeah.
before FCAT sort of
Sure.
thing, and it's like,
Yeah.
we could
I don't
use
disagree.
that money, I think, perhaps more efficiently as we're going through
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well, to help the students that need
I
it now
agree.
versus the last minute stuff, which really doesn't
Yes, ma'am.
I look forward to seeing how much grant money we actually receive each year, so
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for sending that when you do get it next month or the month after.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Alrighty. Next is our operational audits. These are just where we have identified, this year's audit has 8 items that were identified, and I don't know if you've been previewed to this information or
I
not.
think
I
we
was
each
on the
received
committee.
it
I think
in the
Okay.
mail.
Okay.
Or not the committee, but I sat in on the audit.
So I do know that there's 4 or 5 items that are repeat items that I will be meeting with staff today to talk about how we problem solve and how these do not become reoccurring items for the following years. So we will work to make certain that we have processes in place so that whether it's our disaster recovery plan, whether it's payroll, whether it's our security controls, that we will be prepared and ready and have items in place so we can continue to alleviate or minimize the number of items that are finding. My understanding is it went from 20 to 8, which is a celebration, but we wouldn't continue to need to put systems in place so these findings are not reoccurring.
And it was my understanding that several of these will be resolved with our switching over to the new computer
Yeah,
programs.
I'm not certain. I'll find out a date on meeting staff. Because we're gonna unpack every single item and talk about solution. Okay. All right. Next one is 16 is pre-qualification for contractors. This is once again just opportunities for anybody who wants to be a part of our to bid on any of our projects to come and be pre-qualified and go into the list of vendors with an effective date and an expiration date. I think we'll go to now to areas of discussion, which is one is policy 235. One of the concerns was, and we talked about last time, did we have true language that protect any employee by coming forth with any information that may be troubling or concerning, and that they could potentially have experienced retaliation for even reporting any findings within the organization. Met with staff and talked with Mr. Sykes and also our labor attorney, and this is new language that is proposed that we go into in 235. It is our understanding that the language that we currently had in 235 did protect, but it wasn't really outlined explicitly within 235. So this just goes in and really clearly it eliminates some language, but then really adds some language. And you'll see the ad in the underline in red. Says any employee who feels that he or she is subject to any such whistleblower retaliation may file a complaint with the superintendent or the Florida's chief inspector general or any appropriate state agency. And just talks about how this really begins to protect any individual who deems to observe or suspect any fraudulent activities within this organization.
Where did you get this language from?
That came from Eric Hulshauser. Basically, the issue that was brought up by the union, the biggest complaint that they had about the lack of compliance or lack of applicability of the Florida Whistleblower Act, really predominantly has to do with the availability of the administrative remedy through the Florida Commission on Human Relations, which there is no mechanism in which we can make that available to the employees. All of the other provisions of the Whistleblower Act comply and apply to all of our employees. The only thing that it doesn't is the Florida Commission on Human Relations and Whistleblower Act avenue. And there's nothing that we can do to make the Florida Commission on Human Relations take our cases. Really, this is just a restatement. There is nothing that we can add to or subtract from the whistleblower. But Eric put that together. I have reviewed it. In my opinion, really doesn't add much to it, but doesn't detract anything. That's perfectly fine. But there's nothing that we can do that gives the FCHR privileges to our employees. And so at all times they have that right, and they still have that right, and they'll continue to have that right.
I think the question was last week when it was brought up that the way the language read, they were covered under the state, but school board employees, I think Ms. Pivas said school board employees are not state employees.
What,
So
for purposes
this will
of Florida,
cover them?
no. Her complaint was There's not state employees for the purposes of the Florida Commission on Human Relations avenues of the administrative complaint. There is nothing that we can do that gives them that right. That's a state right. We cannot make the Florida Commission on Human Relations take an allegation, take a complaint from a school board employee. We can't. The only thing we can do is make sure that they know that they have the availability of going to the IG with the Department of Education, which that does. And it really flushes it out a little bit better, so if somebody reads it, they can see what mechanisms, what avenues that's available to them. But we cannot add to or detract from everybody's right on the Whistleblower Act. But what we do here is we more clearly spell it out than what was there before.
And before, it just says whistleblower protection may apply to individuals who comply. So,
Well, there you have interesting issues that come up with. I give you an example. I'm dealing one with the city of Stark where we have a whistleblower, but the whistleblower said, if you don't do this, I'm going to go to the press and make you look bad, which is not complying with whistleblower. What you have on one hand, you have somebody seeking whistleblower act protection, and the other hand, you have a person that's committing extortion, which is a second-degree felony. Yeah, and so just because you report something doesn't
Right.
automatically you have to actually comply with the statute.
Right.
The other thing is that you got to go through the proper, you got to report to the
Sure.
right people and go through the proper
Sure.
channels.
Have we looked at any other districts to see what kind of language they have?
Yeah, basically that's the same thing.
Same.
And we've gone through, and I pulled up a series, and I sent, and I went through a series, looked at it, and then we asked for recommendations. I sent off copies of different places, and that was just the,
Thank you for doing that.
okay, any questions on this? Okay. Next one is special action, which we won't get into. Special. And then I believe that is it. That's it.
So for the beginning of the meeting, what school is being showcased?
So beginning of the meeting, let's go back to the front. Right now we have, it's Oak Leaf High School chorus right now, but they may change to another high school. I'll know confirmation today. And then we have the school showcase will be Poe. They'll be the school showcase this month. To highlight some of the
I
great
got to
things.
tour Poe. They invited me over and it was absolutely wonderful. They are, for the number of students that they have, having felt that
Right.
filled
And-
feeling, they're doing a marvelous job.
And they all know that the showcase is for 3 to 4 minutes tops. I will make sure I vet,
That was a little long.
I'll vet the presentation. Feltner did a good job. He wanted to tell his story.
That's it.
But I thought it was very nice for the front of it, for the cherry pickers. I thought it was solid.
That was fun.
They played, I think 4 or 5 of songs. We'll narrow it down to 3 so that we're ready to go, and then we're moving forward. We will also look at any recognitions and awards, and if we think it's too heavy for that month, we'll rotate it to the next month. So we don't have 40 or 50 kids, which we want to highlight and celebrate all in one area. So it becomes kind of heavy. So that will help us continue momentum and continue pace.
Could we maybe highlight one of our career and tech ed programs? I know you can't do it at the top of the meeting because you've already
Sure.
scheduled those, but we could do it with their proclamation, just
Sure.
as an addendum to that. I'm sure Sharice would have somebody that she could recommend. That would
Do
have
one
something
for
to
culinary programs and then they.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
Don't come empty-handed.
They're all great programs, yeah.
The Keystone one is struggling, don't invite them.
Okay.
It's a new teacher. It's a new teacher. They're not, the program's not struggling, let me clarify my comments for the
Recipes
record.
need to be
The program is not
Gotcha.
struggling. They had a very, very long time teacher retire.
Gotcha.
It's a brand new teacher
Yeah.
this year and she's
I'm
getting
hearing
that.
Yeah. Yeah, new teachers are in survival mode always, so we'll highlight a program that's fluent and ready to go.
And
But
I'm
I
not
think it's a
gonna
great
talk in
idea.
it, so that's not a
There you
personal.
go.
So do we want to pull that proclamation to the discussion agenda and then the presentation
We're gonna
will just be
have,
done then?
students,
Yeah,
'cause
we can do that.
otherwise,
We can
yeah.
pull it. Yes, ma'am.
Students.
Yes, ma'am.
How about contract ratification?
Can.
Oh, well, that's gotta be on the agenda.
Well, here's
Does that
here's the issue, it's really a timing issue. Traditionally,
They weren't.
the employees would ratify the contract first and then it would come to the board.
Right.
Due to the timing of now the board being the first week of January, or the first week of February, if we delay the process, that means we would ratify first week of February. In all likelihood, employees would not see anything in their paycheck until the last paycheck in February. So with the board's permission, what I could do is add it to this agenda, but it would look very different. It would be the ratification documents itself. So you would see the actual copies of the language with the underlines, with the signatures at the top of the page. It would look more raw, to put it another way.
We've had it done that way before.
And so I would go ahead and add that. The other thing that the union has insisted on is, we have performance pay this time, which means we agreed to a sum total as a district as what it would cost us, our bottom line out the door price. So through Ms. Legutko's office, the union would like, what does that mean for each employee, for each category added onto that? So once we have that calculation as to how much each teacher gets, because remember, under performance pay, a highly effective annual teacher is different than an effective. So really there are 3 different categories of potential pay for employees. So they want that to be written and spelled out on the document. So as soon as we take the amount that the board has agreed upon, flush the math out, we will add that to the document. We'll add it to the agenda for you to vote on. But again, it'll just have all of the TAs, okay, and that page that says what each employee gets. So then in theory, and many districts do it this way, in theory then it's the original contract plus the changes that you're agreeing to is the big picture. If that occurs, then we'll be able to pay the employees earlier in the process. I will remind you that we still use terms, which is kind of archaic, and so there is a big, long process, and you'd be amazed at how challenging it is just to give people money. So we'll work through that, and we'll get them paid ASAP.
Now, when will the teachers have an opportunity?
They're
to vote
looking
on
at the
this?
week after that for
So it
ratification.
would be the February meeting where you have the chairman and then later.
Yeah, we would come back and we'd do a ceremony after.
Sing kumbaya and hug each other.
Is everybody okay with adding it to the January meeting?
Good.
Go forward,
Okay.
yeah, that would be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie.
As long as I have enough time to process and,
You don't
work
need
with
any-
IT.
You don't
You
plan
don't
on
need
doing
any
any
sleep.
vacation?
Just like to say thank
Oh,
you
my
for
God.
all the hard work that went into it and for reaching an agreement and making it work.
Thank
We
you.
all appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you for your support, everyone at this table.
Right, is there anything else, any comments from school board?
Was everybody in agreement then that the student hearings are not gonna happen on the 3rd, but we would do it on the 5th?
I think we have two students.
That
Oh,
works
yeah.
fine for
Yeah.
me.
What time would
And
you
you'll let
want?
us know what time for.
I think Mr.
Yeah.
Antwingate was suggesting 4, but you want 5.
Well, if there's only 2, would you
I agree.
prefer 5 o'clock?
And your meeting will start at 6.
Oh,
Oh, we better say
yeah. We
no.
better do 4.
Do you think we need an hour for each one?
No, but if we wanna go eat.
I was thinking more of protecting the dignity of the families that are.
Between the, that's what
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
thinking.
thinking-
What you don't want is to have somebody coming, opening the door, trying to come in for the meeting.
While we still have
Right.
families there. And this
Well,
is
you
on
said it's an
January 5th.
updated, we keep changing things. An updated, whatever, so we can make
Of
sure
all
we're
your
right.
upcoming
Do we
Because
have,
Ashley and I were here at 9 o'clock.
Do I
this morning.
have,
That was
do we
our
have-
fault.
Yeah, we didn't
Karen,
read
she
them.
did
I
us.
haven't had time to sit and read on them.
Are we going to add an
I didn't
agenda
make
item?
one that just has
Are we going to add an
grades on
agenda
it. The
item
other,
to
you're
cover
talking about
assessment
that chart that I
and,
did.
He already
It
did.
has all the
It's just-
stats.
it's under,
Really done enough
updates.
Excel.
Okay.
So at the end where the consent agenda is, adoption of consent agenda, then it says CEA update and CESPA update.
Okay,
So they're
it's
added
emailed
to
me.
the,
Got it. I can see
And,
that, sorry.
the superintendent
Oh,
wanted
yeah,
them
they
to
get to
go
speak and speak as long as they
before
want
he
to.
did, so that if you need to address anything.
And we
You
moved
can.
to people speaking.
I have one thing.
Right.
I went through and I double checked the DOE rules and I double checked statute. There is no specific date. They say they have to compliance with the next school year, but
Right.
it doesn't give a specific date.
Okay.
That's good. So you have
Good.
time if you need
Yes,
to.
ma'am.
play with the policy at all.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am.
I
Thank
will
you.
tell you that as we get closer, DOE will adopt
Right.
a rule that specifies it, but as of yet, I don't see where they've done it yet.
Yes, sir.
We'll figure out whatever you can to protect
We'll
the
do it
district
in
as
10
much
days from
as
now.
possible. Did any board members have anything they wanted to comment on?
There's a conflict in our schedule. We have a workshop on the 11th, correct? Of January,
I believe so.
and that's for all of our transportation, I think.
Oh, yeah. and then
The GPS.
Here.
Yeah, I
Yes,
got
and
G,
we're
I
also-
got
And what do we
GP,
have
I got
on
GPS, budget,
GPS and budget.
and,
yeah.
there's one more.
And
So
that's
that was a
when, that's
relatively
when Ms.
long
Troutman
one.
has
Assessment.
teacher
She
of the
was
year
trying to
visits,
do-
the 10th and 11th.
Okay, just tell me what day you, in that week that we can move it to, and,
Well-
that you're available, and then we'll make it happen.
Mr. Superintendent,
Yes, sir.
in terms of picking up the new board attorney, remember at the board meeting on the 5th, I'll hand you a stack of all of the applicants at that point. And then there was discussion about having a board workshop to review the applicants, to pick the top people to interview. And then we would have to establish the date in which the interviews would occur. And then, of course, there would be a final board vote on the February board meeting. That's the current timeline, as I understand it. So those two dates have not been firmed up for both the workshop to pick the top candidates to interview, as well as the time to interview them.
Have you gotten many applicants?
We've gotten 5 or 6. I'd say 2 really good ones, and 3 or 4 that aren't as stellar as those 2.
Any of them have any school board law experience?
Yes.
So we have a workshop on the 11th, and then another one on the 24th. What's the one on the 24th?
That's teacher of the year.
The 24th is for the next board meeting.
Oh, it's just
It's
the
agenda
this
review.
agenda review.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the workshop on the 11th?
It's the, workshop on GPS, assessment calendar, and budget.
And that's a Wednesday?
Let's see, 11 o'clock.
It is a Wednesday, yes.
And the teacher of the year walkthroughs are the 10th and 11th, correct?
We can move that to whenever you would like to move it.
What time is the workshop on the 11th? I don't have that on
Schedule at 9:30.
9:30. What if we move it to like Thursday evening, the 12th?
It's fine, you just tell me when. If everybody's fine.
Since we've got 2 morning.
And then if we're gonna do it in the evening, do you wanna just do it at our school board? At the TTC, or you still want it here? This might be attended by others.
Yeah, I think
I
if we
think it
have,
should
if,
be.
Need to check
if we
the
can ever
agenda.
have it at the TTC, that's where it needs to be. I don't like having special meetings. Workshops are fine when we're talking about our agenda, but when we have that
Yes.
special
Yeah,
meeting
the rest
before,
need
it
to
just
be
makes
Right.
where
it.
the
Last
public
week
can
was good.
come.
I say last week.
Yeah.
So this would be the January 11th?
Right.
No, January 12th would be,
Okay.
12th in the evening.
Just tell me when.
What time?
Let's say, 6 o'clock, and Mrs. Bush, could you check and see if the room's available, and if not, we'll,
Mr. Davis, that was the day where you got the K-8 and the 9-12 publisher presentations for social studies taking up the TTC all day, so it's possible that then if that got pushed back, then that room is available.
I thought we pressed pause on that.
Yeah, so if you press pause, then that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying, is that the
make sure
room
that
had
they-
been
yeah.
reserved, it's very possible
Yeah,
the room's
should be
actually
good.
available,
Yeah.
Right.
which it wouldn't normally be.
is 6 o'clock okay with everyone?
On the 12th at the
Do
TTC.
you want it early or later?
6 o'clock is fine.
Okay.
And then did you wanna look at dates for Mr. Broski's workshops too?
Or add it to the existing workshop.
Yeah, can we just add it on?
To the same.
Well, the first
to-
one,
The
I mean,
12th.
the first one you said was just to review the applications.
Right. My plan is to hand out not only a list of applicants and every piece of paper that they gave me, but also an organizational chart to help the board with what experiences that candidate has, which would include whether or not they work for a firm or not,
Right.
whether or not they have educational law experience. So it's a matter of the board sifting through that and deciding which people they want to interview. but I'm planning on giving you some organizational tools to help you in the process.
And
Well, can they
what's
get-
the
because
date
at
that they can
same
continue
workshop,
to
say
send
another meeting.
applications?
Yeah,
and
just
documents?
Until the end of the month.
Add the
31st.
fourth thing on there,
Yes, ma'am.
Gary.
That
Just
would
make
be
it
good
number
on that
4
workshop.
on that. We'll be, get it all done in one time, instead of going back and forth.
Well, you know, some things to consider are where the applicant actually lives. You know, sometimes people apply for a job, but they live in Michigan. So then you have to think, what's the,
Has to make them.
you know, how's that gonna work out?
They want to retire to Florida.
One candidate did not wanted to retain their current job and do this in addition to their current job.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I'll make notes to that effect on the stuff that I give you, but there's all kinds of things to consider on who the final candidates for interviews are going to be.
It would be helpful if you got the applications to us in advance, so that we can review them all before that workshop.
Right,
So
right.
as
On
soon
the
as you got
5th,
them together.
on the
send them
5th,
out.
when we meet for the board meeting, I'll hand you a stack of
All
everything.
right, very good, thank you. Was there anything else? All right. Mr.
4 o'clock on
Superintendent,
Monday?
anything?
No, I just want to make, so for for clarification, so our workshop on test calendar, GPA, and GPS and budget is going to be on the 12th at 6 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. And then I want to make sure my updates are clear. So do enrollment, looking at the initiation process of where it starts within the organization and between different universities and colleges as well. State colleges, I look at open enrollment. We'll make sure that we have backup language that we'll post through me and Mr. Hendricks. I'm working on a PowerPoint I can provide as well. Looking at changing the proclamation from determined technical and professional. Look at student travel policies, just for a question to understand if it's internal or not. And then we'll send back up to Intel this evening, and then capturing grants for February, funding timeline, usage, deliverables, those types of things. And then CTE, I'll get someone to exhibit good things on that thing.
All right,
Hey, we're good.
thank you.
Thank you for your
All
time.
right, meeting adjourned.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you all.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.